Thanks, Satiris. So I'm here to talk to you about the Central Australian context of this project, but we'll start off with a video that's a local video just up the road in Tennant with Norm Japarula and his battle to access renewable energy.
It's a 43-degree day in Tennant Creek, and for Norm and Frank Juparula, that used to mean trouble. As the temperatures soar, so do electricity costs for his household of 7.
Well, I was thinking about power all the time. We were thinking about, because we've got to be careful.
For Norm and other people who call the desert home, staying cool is a matter of life and death.
Once temperatures go above about 41 to 42 degrees Celsius inside your body, your proteins start to denature and you literally start to cook. And so when the temperature outside is above 40 degrees Celsius, it's really dangerous weather for anybody. And if you can't find shelter from that extreme heat, then everybody's in trouble.
Norm is a renal patient, which means he's even more susceptible to the heat, and he needs to keep some of his medicine refrigerated. Like most Indigenous public housing tenants in the NT, Norm prepays for his electricity, which is expensive and means that without careful planning, his power can cut out at any moment.
If the power goes during the day, bloody hell, you'll cook. It's really hot.
Despite being a board director for several community organizations and having had a long career in public health, Norm isn't always in a position to top it up.
Me and I get it every fortnightly, see? And sometimes we're out of power on our off weeks. And lucky we got friends,
Tennant Creek is hot and getting hotter. In the last year, temperatures have soared past 40 degrees nearly 50 times, which means having access to reliable electricity and reliable cooling is more important than ever. In a first for the territory, Norm's taken his power supply into his own hands.
Now I don't have to pay electricity anymore, no more. Only a little bit of money now.
He's done what no other prepaid power user in the NT has done: installed and switched on rooftop solar.
We're lucky. I reckon split system goes, during the day when it's really hot days, and at night we don't have to, sleep outside or suffer now with that heat. Now it's we live in luxury now, I reckon.
Thanks to rooftop solar, Norm has more than 2/3 of his electricity costs covered, leaving him with a lot more money in his pocket to look after his family, and with a lot less anxiety. According to new research from ANU, in 1 year, 9 out of 10 public housing homes in the NT were temporarily disconnected because they ran out of credit, and almost 3/4 of residents were disconnected more than 10 times, for periods of anywhere between an hour or two to overnight. Norm's solar panels were paid for by a community development organization who want to see solar become an option for the 10,000 homes in the NT that use a prepaid meter.
This was a house that was really worthy of a case study to look at what were the structural barriers that were preventing Indigenous households and communities from accessing the benefits of rooftop solar like everyone else in the Northern Territory can currently enjoy.
They found plenty of roadblocks.
There weren't any clear rules for households like Norm's in-town camps or remote communities that would allow people to connect rooftop solar through a prepaid meter.
I pushed my way with the government and then pushed my way with the housing and that. Then I had to push my way with bloody power and water. Power and water, the one been really hold up because they was talking about the meter.
He has opened the door for so many other Territorians living in public housing in the bush, and most importantly, sent a strong message that, particularly Aboriginal people are very conscious about their energy use and about global warming and climate change.
But there is still a long way to go. Proponents of rooftop solar say there are 4 key barriers to rolling solar out across the territory's public housing. It's expensive, first of all, and tenants need permission to install it. But once it's up, there's also a clause in the tenant's rental agreement that means the panels need to be removed at the tenant's expense when they move out. And finally, there still isn't a tariff set up to allow people like Norm to get paid for the power they give back to the grid. But community leaders like Norm are hopeful and are calling on the territory government to make rooftop solar a possibility for all public housing tenants, as Indigenous organizations across the territory look to the future. Here in Alice Springs, Tarongera Council, who administer town camps, is taking notice.
Tang is trying to put that forward to Jakarta Energy to help vulnerable people like Ken Campus to fight to install some solar panels into their houses.
They'll try to stop you. I said they'll try, but all you gotta do is keep pushing. Just keep on shaking the bush. That's the only way. If you don't shake the bush, nobody will listen to you, true, I tell you.
A light on the horizon. Samantha Chauncher, ABC News.
Yeah, so great success story. But just an example of what we were talking about earlier this morning, you know, the structural inequities that exist, how difficult it is for a community housing household to gain access to solar panels that we can easily access where we're in urban areas or regional areas. So yeah, Noel's a personal hero of mine, and he's really paved the way for other communities. Like you said, you just have to be persistent and shake the bush. So as Satiris mentioned, one of our first activities under this project, we were keen to learn from the literature around what are the enablers to adoption of solar domestic energy systems. We categorize them into three sort of areas. The technical and financial enablers. So as we heard from Arnie Linde this morning, having that lower upfront cost of energy systems is a real enabler. Solar systems are generally quite expensive. Diesel generators not so. So we need to be able to find ways of subsidising the cost of these energy systems for communities. That doesn't then land the expense on the community themselves. Obviously, you know, increasing the economic capability of households, and that really is about addressing the social determinants of a number of these communities. And again, I think renewable energy could play a part in this. So the community and social context as well is so important. Having an understanding of what community wants from their renewable energy systems, so that we can ensure that they meet the household as well as community needs. And at the same time, we can improve community capability in and skill in their understanding of renewable energy technology. And having community-led renewable energy projects can potentially provide job opportunities for local mob. And most importantly, the institutional support. So, you know, we just heard how many hurdles Norm had to jump through to get solar on his roof. And he has to take it away when he leaves. I think he actually had to get a building certificate to prove to the government that the house could withstand the weight of the panels on top of the roof. So enabling public policy, or sort of designing an enabling public policy system to enable these changes to happen. And that includes building the institutional capacity of government and providers. And improving the coordination as well across different levels of government. Arnie Linde was telling me last night about a situation where there's 2 large solar arrays that have been built in the northern part of the territory that are essentially just sitting there. They're not connected to the grid because a bit of lack of communication between the company that constructed these solar farms and Power and Water has resulted in this situation where you know it's not providing this lower cost energy to communities where it could be right now. So just an example of the policy and bureaucratic barriers that can exist. And just before Priya gets up to talk about the outcomes of her stakeholder interviews with Central Australian stakeholders, you probably know this already if you're from the region, but all communities here are microgrids. There's no sort of centralized grid. The utility managed by by government, the government-owned power and water company. And they're generally run on a mix of diesel or gas or hybrid with solar. In Alice Springs, there's a large scale solar installation that complements 2 power stations, which also utilize a mix of gas and diesel. And that Alice Springs solar array also supplies the smaller sort of surrounding communities, and it does have a battery storage system for grid stabilization. I note here in Alice that there are quite a few households with domestic PV as well, feeding into the grid, which is great. Power and Water manage about 72 Indigenous communities across the whole of the Northern Territory. All have diesel power. Only 9 have PV panels operating in a sort of hybrid model system. Now, the outstations and homelands, they're not actually eligible for government utility supplied energy services if there's less than 100 people, which a lot of these outstations are. There are about 400 across the NT that use mostly diesel and petrol gas, and about 130 have small solar battery systems that were supplied by the Bushlight program, which I think is now finished. Is that right? Yeah, ended in 2014. So who's maintaining these systems? Yeah, so Cyprian, I might hand over to you.